Welcome to the middle. The news from both sides, no spin. 3 stories today. Here's what happened. Here's what the left says, what the right says, and here's what the facts actually show. Let's get into it. Story 1, blockade, bombs, and a possible deal. The U.S. Navy is blockading Iran with 10,000 troops and more than a dozen warships, and Wall Street just hit an all-time high. 3 days in, and the blockade is doing what it is designed to do. U.S. Central Command said it has completely halted Iran's sea trade. Ceasefire talks in Pakistan broke down over the weekend, but a new mediator has emerged. Pakistan's army chief is now in Tehran, and the White House says it feels good about a second round of talks. Iran has threatened to disrupt Red Sea shipping if the blockade holds. Trump calls the war very close to over. The left's take? The left argues this is reckless escalation with no defined endgame. Blockading a nation's port is an act of economic warfare, and when you cut out a country's trade, it's the civilian population that absorbs the cost first. Iran has already suspended its petrochemical exports to protect its own domestic supply, meaning ordinary Iranians are running short before their government is feeling real pain. Military pressure without a clear diplomatic framework has a long history of backfiring. Dropping bombs and blockading ports might feel decisive, but history says you can't bomb your way to the negotiating table. The right's take? The right says this is maximum pressure working exactly as intended, and that 40 years of diplomatic half-measure produced nuclear-capable Iran with regional militias in 5 countries. The difference now isn't a strategy, it's the credibility. When you actually follow through on military threats, adversaries recalibrate. If Iran wants its shipping lanes back, it has to put something real on the table. And for the first time in a long time, it actually does. The facts? The blockade is confirmed effective by U.S. Central Command. The ceasefire talks did collapse, but Pakistan's army chief is now brokering the next round in Tehran. That's a significant escalation in diplomatic effort, not an abandonment. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ both hit record highs this week, which tells you what markets think the most likely outcome is. And here's the thing that neither side is talking about. Iraq is caught directly in the middle. Iraq just elected a new president, and both the US and Iran are now actively lobbying for their preferred candidate for prime minister. Iran's militia network and Washington's anti-militia pressure both run through Baghdad. Any lasting deal with Iran almost certainly has to include some arrangement over Iraq. That conversation hasn't started yet. The bottom line? The blockade is working as a lever, but the hardest part of the negotiation hasn't begun. Story 2. 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, same exit. 2 members of Congress resigned this week. 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, both for sexual misconduct. And here's the part that got buried. The moment they resigned, the ethics investigation against them ended. Rep. Eric Swalwell of California and Rep. Tony Gonzalez of Texas both submitted their resignations Tuesday, minutes before the House was prepared to move expulsion votes. Swalwell faces sexual assault and rape allegations from 4 women, allegations he denies. The Manhattan District Attorney has opened a separate probe. Gonzalez admitted to having an affair with a staffer who later died of suicide and faces allegations of sending explicit text to a second staffer. Both the House Speaker and the Minority Leader said publicly they made the right decision. The left's take? The left argues this is an accountability gap masquerading as accountability. The House Ethics Committee only has jurisdiction over sitting members, so resigning is, in effect, an escape hatch. The investigations end, the findings are never published. The staffers who are harmed never get a formal institutional record. The National Women's Defense League called for structural reforms specifically because resignations without policy change don't fix the conditions that allowed the misconduct in the first place. Congress has never successfully expelled a member for sexual misconduct, and that's not a record. It's a warning. The right's take? The right argues this is what accountability looks like when it works without becoming a partisan circus. Members of both parties, Democrats targeting Gonzalez, and Republicans targeting Swalwell, drafted expulsion measures simultaneously. Leadership in both parties endorsed the outcomes publicly. 2 men are now gone. When a Democrat and Republican face the same standard on the same day, that's not a broken system. That's accountability functioning the way it's supposed to. The facts, the bipartisan mechanics were real. Cross-party expulsion drafts were confirmed by multiple outlets. Both the Speaker and Minority Leader publicly endorsed the resignations. The Ethics Committee jurisdiction ending at resignation is confirmed. Not a loophole, just how the rule is written. The Manhattan DA probe into Swalwell continues independently. California has scheduled a special election for August 18th. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has not yet confirmed one for Gonzalez's seat. And here's the thing neither side is talking about. Congress is already moving to the next round. Rep. Sheila Sherfulis McCormick, Democrat of Florida, was found guilty of 25 ethics violations by a bipartisan committee. Rep. Corey Mills, Republican of Florida, is under a separate probe. The Swalwell-Gonzalez chapter is being closed. The pattern it revealed is still open. The bottom line, the exits were clean, but clean exits aren't the same as accountability, and 2 more members are already in the queue. In story 3, the tariff hangover 1 year later. The Supreme Court struck down Trump's biggest tariffs. So why is the average American household still paying over $1,000 more per year? April 2nd marked 1 year since Liberation Day, when Trump announced sweeping tariffs on nearly every U.S. trading partner. The Supreme Court threw out IEEPA tariffs in February, ruling 6-3 that the law doesn't grant the president that authority. Trump immediately pivoted to Section 122 tariffs, a 10% global import tax covering $1.2 trillion in goods, set to expire in 150 days. A federal court is now hearing a new challenge. And 2 weeks ago, Trump added another layer: tariffs of up to 100% on pharmaceutical imports. The left's take? The left says the data is in, and it isn't pretty. U.S. manufacturing employment dropped in 9 of the 10 months following Liberation Day, a net loss of 89,000 jobs. The tariffs hit lower-income households proportionally harder, a 0.9 percentage point tax increase for the bottom quintile versus 0.7% for the top. About 80 to 85% of tariff costs were absorbed domestically, by businesses eating the margin or consumers paying more at checkout. This isn't trade policy. It's a regressive tax that working Americans are paying so corporations can claim their reshoring jobs they haven't actually brought back. The right's take? The right says the critics predicted catastrophe and were wrong. The data shows real progress. The U.S. trade deficit with China fell 32% year over year in 2025. Manufacturing activity expanded for 3 straight months as of March. Dozens of trading partners accelerated negotiations for new agreements the moment they realized the U.S. was serious. 40 years of free trade cost America its industrial base and millions of jobs. And the same economist saying Liberation Day failed said the same thing in 2018, and they were wrong then too. And the facts? Both sides have real numbers. The China trade deficit did fall 32%. Manufacturing activity is genuinely expanding, but manufacturing employment, actual jobs, declined in 9 of the 10 post-Liberation Day months, a net loss of 89,000. The average tariff burden is approximately $1,050 per household in 2026. The Supreme Court ruling did significantly reduce that tariff load. The effective rate fell from a peak of 21% down to the current 11%. And here's the thing neither side is talking about. The new 100% pharmaceutical tariffs are being framed as bringing drug manufacturing back to America. But the U.S. pharmaceutical industry is almost entirely dependent on active ingredients manufactured in China and India. There is no domestic supply chain to return to. It would take over a decade or more to build one. In the meantime, the tariffs function as a 100% price increase on the inputs that make your medication. Bottom line, 1 year in, the tariffs have changed the global trading system in ways that appear permanent, whether or not the policy ever achieves its stated goal. That's the middle for today. 3 stories, both sides, no agenda. If this is useful to you, share it with someone who's tired of being told what to think. See you next time.